I like to call this one Not So Cleverly, James. Home Secretary James Cleverly, the man who has been giving it all the talk about cracking down on drink spiking, came out with this comment about his wife. He said a little bit of Rohypnol in her drink every night was not really illegal if it's only a little bit. He then laughed and went on to say that the secret to a long marriage was ensuring your spouse was someone who is always mildly sedated so she can never realise there are better men out there. Yet only hours before, on Channel 4, he said this.
Updating the law to make it more relevant, to make it explicit to spiking, so that police officers can understand it and deploy it, so that people hear that it is completely unacceptable and we are cracking down on it. But as well as the legislation, of course, we are doing a whole load of other things, training, awareness. I've got teenage boys, and amongst their friendship group, it's well known that this is a prevalent problem. And we have got to crack down on this. We've got to give the police the powers that they need, modern, up-to-date legislation, not something from the Victorian era. Well, the sad truth is that women in particular have been victimised for centuries. But it's not inevitable, it's not acceptable, and we are certainly not just going to pretend that that's just a byproduct of the modern world, because it isn't and it mustn't be.
How can anyone take him seriously? Dear God, what was he thinking saying that? OK, now I like a joke or two, and perhaps if he'd said this privately to a group of lads, he may have got away with it. It's, you know, that's not to say that men don't get spiked and that some women wouldn't also find his comments amusing. But how bad is his judgment if he thinks that this is an appropriate thing to say in front of a widely female audience in Downing Street after making calls to give harsher punishments to those who spike drinks? A spokesperson for the Home Secretary said, in what was always understood as a private conversation, James, the Home Secretary, tackling spiking, made what was clearly meant to be an ironic joke, for which he apologises. I mean, previously, James has described tackling violence against women and girls as a personal priority and called spiking a perverse crime. So which one are you, James? But his comments are also making light of drink spiking has also handed a beating stick to Labour, whose senior figures called his comments appalling. Alex Davies-Jones, Shadow Minister for Domestic Violence and Safeguarding, said it was a joke. Is the most tired excuse in the book, and no one is buying it. If the Home Secretary is serious about tackling spiking and violence against women and girls, then that requires a full cultural change. The banter needs to stop, and it has to start at the top. Well, Shadow Home Secretary Yvette Cooper said spiking is a disturbing and serious crime which is having a devastating impact on young women's lives. It is truly unbelievable that the Home Secretary made such an appalling joke on the very same day the government announced new policies on spiking. OK, so here's where I stand on it. Spiking someone's drink is tantamount to poisoning. It's a wicked and terrible thing to do. It is a complete invasion of someone's body and should be properly dealt with by the legal system. And I can't see any way that I would find this amusing. With over 6,700 reported cases of spiking since May last year in England and Wales, including almost 1,000 of them by needle, it's just not funny, James. Police are receiving over 500 reports of spiking each month, and in the main, women are the victims. What a stupid thing for a Home Secretary to say about a joke, especially at this time of year when bars and nightclubs, which is where most of these incidents occur, are at their busiest. Serial killers like Stephen Port and rapists alike have used that very drug, Rohypnol, to ensnare their victims. Not so cleverly, James. It looks like it's home James for you. Time for Home Secretary number whatever.